Real Nerds is a proud partner of the Denver Podcast Network. In the shadow of the mountains,
we speak. Coming to you from the X-Axis, it's John of All Trades with your host, John X.
Welcome to this John of All Trades podcast promo. Each Wednesday, I bring you a brand new interview with someone fascinating and ask the question we all ask when we meet someone new. Hey, what do you do? It's fun, informative, and it's the 2017 Westward Reader's Choice Award winner for Best Denver Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, and johnofalltrades.us.
Oh, hi, podcast listeners. There's many ways you can listen to the Real Nerds podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes. You can also subscribe on Stitcher Radio. You want to send us a Twitter message? You can do that. It's so easy, at Real Nerds. Like us on Facebook, Real Nerds Podcast. You can visit our website, realnerdspodcast.com, where there'll be a lot of articles for you to not only read, but to listen to our previous shows. You can also call us, 720-6nerds5. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Georges Genti, and you are listening to Real Nerds Podcast.
Welcome to another Real Nerds Podcast interview from Denver Pop Culture Con 2019. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Denver Pop Culture Con 2019. We are live on the showroom floor with author extraordinaire, and I'm going to have her introduce herself to you. So she'll do herself a favor by being awesome in the introduction.
Hi,
Welcome.
everyone. I am Dacia M. Arnold. I am a Denver author of dystopian mom fiction. So imagine Divergent, but the mom saves the world. Set here in Denver, a lot of the DIA conspiracy about a hidden city underneath the airport.
Does Lucifer play a role in your books?
0 roles.
0?
There is a lot of mention of the ridiculous art at DIA.
Isn't it weird? We have the weirdest airport. Like, it's so nice when you're inside, but what's up with, like, the gargoyle who looks at you and talks to you? And I have no idea what's up with DIA.
So it's really interesting. I have actually gone and had cocktails in the hotel that looks like a giant U.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. A lot of my second book takes place in that hotel. So I've heard some stories from the people that work in the hotel that there are these fluid spikes in between the hotel and the actual security terminal, and they are just somebody's art. And it's supposed to resemble wheat, like the flowing of wheat in the wind. But really, they're just all these metal spikes that move. It's strange.
You know, it's not that unusual. I mean, did you grow up here? Were you around when they were building DIA?
No, I actually am a transplant.
That's all right. There's millions of you now. No, but my dad helped with the baggage system, and when it was opening, the baggage system was a problem. And lately, they had to put the new train in, and so they had to dig up, like, the sculpture underneath or something, and it's just a weird airport.
Does he know about the second level?
I don't know. I've never asked him.
I'm going to ask him.
Perfect. What is the second level?
So the second level apparently is where all the baggage conveyor belts. Sorry, I'm not going to word very good today.
It's all right.
So there's like these crazy system of baggage conveyor belts on the second level. Theoretically, no one's allowed in there.
Weird.
They won't open the door. There's no cameras. No one talks about it.
See, that's why everyone thinks there's, like, aliens underneath DIA.
There was also an aerial view when the airport was being built of these buildings underneath the ground, and then a few days later it was covered up. Like the ground, they just mowed over the buildings that were below surface level. So there's also Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which is I'd say about 5 miles from the airport proper, and it's a wildlife preserve. But it's also Rocky Mountain Arsenal. So
that whole area, something's not right.
So weird. I live there.
Oh, but you know what? It's beautiful.
It is. I mean, no, it's great.
It's fun. You always talk to people who fly into here. They don't realize how far the airport is from everything
outside of the city. Yeah.
Yeah, but they had to put it out there so the city doesn't bother. The airport doesn't bother the city folk.
But it's really strange because we had I say because I didn't live here then, but there was a functional airport in Stapleton, and there was nothing logistically wrong with the Stapleton
I think it's wanted
airport.
a modern international one is, I think, the end game for it.
Yeah, with a city underneath and a fallout
for some weird reason.
Of people for some weird reason.
Yeah, so what gave you the idea for your book?
So at the time I was writing my book, there was a show on called Revolution, and in this TV show, it's a future dystopia where no electricity worked, and I loved this concept. And then as an adult, I read a bunch of Divergent, Hunger Games, Maze Runner, Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children, and I loved the YA action and how it was fast-paced and you never really got a break. And but I was looking for something I could relate to as an adult with a mortgage and a job and kids, and I couldn't find it, so I decided to write it.
Nice. And were you a writer beforehand, or how did you fall into the novel?
Whoa, so I'm a daddy's girl, but my dad was gone a lot of the time when I was younger. He was in the Army and retired 24 years as a sergeant major.
Oh.
So when I became of age, I went on this soul-searching journey to find out where my dad had been my entire adult life. So I joined the Army and went to war a couple times and built this, something me and my father had in common to bridge this gap that I was missing as a kid. So then when he retired out of the military, he finally published a book that he had been working on since high school.
Wow.
Yes. So when I got out of the military, I was working night shift, and I was reading all these books, and I was like, Dad wrote this book, and if Dad can do it, I can do it. And then I did it, but it turns out that the success from my dystopian novel really overshadowed my dad's lifelong dream to become published, and it drove a wedge in between our relationship. So it's it's a double-edged sword of maintaining my dad's ego as well as I just wanted to be like you.
Yeah. But isn't he proud of his daughter for being able to publish a book and have it popular?
I have a huge smile on my face, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Sorry. So back to DIA.
Let's go.
Well, thanks for your service and that's interesting. Were you ever trained to write books, or it's just you were such a fan that you understood how to write one?
No, I actually only have a GED. So I joined the military back during the surge when George Bush sent everyone to war. So I spent 15 months working in Baghdad emergency room as an emergency room tech, and saw crazy, crazy things. And I later really got into HR and doing paperwork, because at that point, any trauma that I'd see after that wouldn't come close to what I experienced. So I get really good at paperwork, and I'll let the new soldiers go get their boots bloody, and I would write their reviews and do their training and stuff like that. I was completely okay being a supervisor, but I got really good at self-checking my stuff before I send it to the commander to send it back down. Another funny story, my company commander from Baghdad ER owns Bleeding Ink Publishing, and he's on author row, I think booth 21.
Wow.
Yes, and this was over a decade and a half ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so he continues to be a mentor to me as an author, and as well as back then as a soldier.
You said this is your first con that you've been to? Mm-hmm. How is the con treating you?
I am having a great time. I've been super busy talking to some amazing people. I'm sitting on panels. I'm meeting uber famous people that I have stalked for weeks. And then I'm meeting these people in person, and I'm like, I know that you went to Africa 12 years ago.
And when you say that to them, what's their response?
They just think it's cute, I hope. I'm being weird. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't make a fool out of myself asking you some silly question.
That's awesome. Do you have you said you're working on another book, or is your other book already out?
I'm always working on books, but I just came out with one on Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
I did, yeah. It's a collection of just a bunch of short stories, fiction, nonfiction. There's some poetry in there. I wrote a couple plays. The thing is, I will go into any project not anticipating to fail. So if it's good enough, I'll keep it. But then I also am a perfectionist. So if I get to the end and I feel like I'm not going to make it or it's not going to be okay, then I'll quit. Because quitting is far less embarrassing than failing. If that makes any sense.
No, that's 100% correct. I agree 100%. So when you, I mean, I guess I don't understand because I'm not a writer. The young adult books are really popular, but they're not just popular with teenagers. They're also popular with adults. So how do you differentiate your book for more of an adult crowd to not the YA crowd?
So this is a great question. So YA dystopian novels specifically have a very specific formula, and it has to do with you're a normal person, or the protagonist is a normal person going through this life that may not work for their better good, but works for the good of most. And then for some reason they are singled out. They don't necessarily want it. They go through a bunch of trials to get to where they need to be. And then there is a point in time in every single YA dystopian book where you're like, oh my goodness, I have no idea how they're going to get out of this. Like, how can they possibly survive? And then they do. And then at the end of the story, it's like, you know, it's a happiest ending for the most amount of people.
It's funny. You just like blew my mind when you're describing that arc. I'm like, oh my gosh, Hunger Games, Mortal Engines. I'm just like following along.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it is really just that?
Every single one. But then everything is different. So like every like specific story. So with Divergent, she was in the military and went through these factions. In Hunger Games, it was like this lottery. In Maze Runner, they were a part of an experiment, and then they escaped the experiment and went back to the experiment. But it's this like a similar formula. And then by the third book, you're just reading the first book for the third time.
So is your book going to be a series then? Mm-hmm. And so how do you plan that? How do you know when you're writing it that you're going to continue it? Does it come organically, or is it very well planned out? So
the very first book I wrote by the seat of my pants, and I'm a pantser, and things just came together on accident mostly. But there is always like the big arc, the big story is the big war, and the good guy versus the bad guy. The individual stories are the good guy versus the immediate threat, building up to the big boss at the end. Do you know how many books it's going to be? It's 3. It's 3? So my second book is with my publisher right now, and I'll get like random texts throughout the day, like, "Oh my God, I hate you," and in a good way, in a good way. Yes. So, is it hard then when you send a book in that you know that they're going to have notes? Are you prepared for that to do that, or you just put your foot down and say, "Nope, that's the book," and that you're going to have to? I have apologized to my editor more times than I can count, that I'm like, this is garbage. I know it's garbage. Like, you need to fix this. I am absolutely open to suggestions, especially being a new author. I only started writing my first book that came out originally in December. I started writing that in 2015. Wow, so that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's a fast trajectory. It is, and it's very, very not typical of authors. So, then, I would say, well, what advice would you have to authors if it's not typical to get noticed that quickly? So I would recommend researching while you write. Learn if you've never written anything before, learn absolutely everything that you can. I'm very fortunate in that I stumbled upon organizations like the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers, where there are these very, very inspirational and successful authors willing to teach you if you can just humble yourself and sit at their feet and listen, and not only listen but observe and soak everything up as a sponge. I also like I said, I had a GED going into this. Back in 2015, I started college because I had writer's block, and I'm like, well, maybe if I learned more about writing, then I could finish this book. And I will finish next year with a bachelor's in English and
Wow.
a 3.9 GPA.
Wow, you are such a cool story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I also have 2 small children who are 6 and 2, and
Wow.
I work full time.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
I'm tired.
It's funny, I have a 4-year-old, and I always say, they always ask me what the difference between being a parent and just being married is. I said, I'm tired all the time.
All the time.
And I can't describe the tired. It's just, when you sit at home and you just got off work and you're watching the Rockies and your kid's just jumping all over the place, and you realize like 40 minutes has passed.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, did I sleep? Or was I just not
Zoning
there?
out.
I don't
My
know.
brain was just off. I don't know. But also being in the military for so long, my entire adult life, you're constantly engaged, because if you're not on your toes at any given point in time, people die. Like
Yeah.
it's intense. So transitioning from the military to civilian life as a mother, you have to find things to occupy yourself, or else you really go crazy. So if I were bored, I would not be happy.
And you think that's important for military and veterans to find something that they like to help them in their process back to civilian life?
Absolutely. One thing that you'll hear like law enforcement and military talk about is this switch. So there's a switch to of hypervigilance. So if I had the switch on as a civilian, like, I would not be here. I
Yep.
could not handle the amount of people just coming in and out. So as a mother, for example, my son is in kindergarten, okay? I'm a working mother, and I sometimes don't get to make it to things. So when I am there, I have to make a conscious decision to sit in the front of the auditorium so my son can see that mom was there for this thing in my life, versus sitting in the back next to the exits so I can scan the room for potential threats and protect all these little people. So it's a balance.
Yeah, I laugh, because I'll let you in on a secret. My real job is I'm a cop.
No, yeah.
So
you get it.
So I totally my little boy had a performance at his school, and he's in preschool, and I was still on duty,
Yeah.
and so I stand in the back, and so no one can come from behind me. And my wife understands, but she doesn't understand. I said, it's just, you have to be constantly aware, and you have to know how to turn it off, and that's why I do stuff like this, because if I didn't, I would not be a nice person.
No, yeah,
because people are
exactly.
horrible.
Because you're on your toes all
Absolutely.
the time. I have a friend who's a very tall, beautiful, blonde lady cop. And so we're
Similar.
Yeah. So she will sit in the back, and I know, I can see her scanning, and I know in my head what she's doing. And then I have this guilt as a mother of, like, I should be doing, I know better. Like,
Yeah.
and I know how to react, and I know what to do. But at the same, like I said, you gotta know when to turn it off and when to give yourself a little grace too.
Yeah, that's advice I give every, because I'm an FTO, so I train new officers.
Oh, good.
I tell them all the time, you got to find something, because if you don't, you're going to turn to booze, you're going to turn to something, and you got to find that balance. And I told them too, I said, if you go to a call and it's driving you crazy, and you're done, go park your car and hide somewhere.
Yeah,
Because
do paperwork.
you have to, because if the paperwork will take you away.
Yeah.
And I that's really fascinating, and that's cool that you became an author with that, because the hypervigilance never goes away.
No, it
And you
doesn't.
have to find a way to turn it off.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Exactly.
So where can we find you, and where can we buy your book?
First of all, you can find me and buy my books at DaciaMArnold.com. And then you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at the same Dacia M. Arnold.
Well, thank you for coming on our show. I really appreciate it. Your story is awesome.
Hey, thanks.
And thanks for all your hard work, and awesome. And so you made it. You made it through the con.
I did.
You made it through the interview.
Stay honest.
And you did very well.
Oh, thank you.
And you only have, just the medium size Red Bull. And you're back tomorrow?
I am all weekend.
You'll on Sunday around like 4 when it ends at 6, you'll be like, oh my gosh, is it over with?
I might be buzzed.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. And we're like,
Just kidding.
I understand. Well, thank you
Hey,
so
thanks.
much.
This has been another Real Nerds Podcast interview from Denver Pop Culture Con 2019. See you next year.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Real Nerds Podcast. Real Nerds Podcast is a production of Nebulous Visions Multimedia. Thank you to Sparks Mandrill and Plan 9 Studios for our kick-ass theme song. Also, if you're in the Denver area and you're looking for a cool place to see movies, we see them at the Alamo Draft House in Littleton and now also in Sloan's Lake. Thank you to Colorado Coins, Cards, and Comics for supplying us with all our comic needs, especially you, Andrew. You know who you are. And a big shout out to James's mom. I'm giving you an electronic hug that you can feel through the airwaves. Thanks for listening, and have a nice day.